Everybody, and welcome to the video and the lesson on memory. Memory is, all of us have it to some extent, and the thing is that you want to know how your memory works most naturally in order to use that and to capitalize on that so that when you're in class, you can code things in a way that makes sense for you. And so I'm going to go through some slides. I'm going to pull those up right now, and we're going to go through some different elements of memory. So hopefully you will be able to talk about memory. It's hard to multitask here sometimes, but okay, here we go. So we are going to talk about the different kinds of memory as well as certain processes and try to see how these can help you in terms of learning, understanding, being tested, but also most of all, incorporating the material in class into yourself so that you can then apply it and create on your own and build on that foundation. So, first slide is memory pathways. There are two simplistic ways to think about how memory works and the pathways that it goes through. So one is explicit memory. This is like school memory if we are talking about semantics. So semantic memory is knowledge. It's kind of like if you can name dates and names and quote out of a book, that is semantic. Then you have episodic. Episodic is remembering a birthday. It is an episode of your life. It's like if you remembered an episode of The Simpsons, then that is what this kind of memory is like. It is an episode in your life. Like you can remember when you turned 16, or you can remember your first day of school or something like that. And that is how that comes out, episodic and semantic. Then we have implicit. Implicit can be separated into two parts. One is procedural, so it's like riding a bike. Once you have it down, you have it down. But sometimes, it's interesting. I am recording this during the COVID time, so I am in my house, and every time I leave my house with my mask, I forget my keys. And every time I have my keys, I forget my mask, because having that mask now is adding one more thing to my procedure, and it's messing me up. So you can see when you overlearn a procedure and then there's like a kink in it, then that will kind of mess it up, and you have to figure out ways and prompts in order to have that process and have that procedure come a little more naturally. And I should add here that implicit is more of the memory that you don't think about. Like, I might think about, like, oh, what did I do on my 21st birthday? I can think about that, but I don't necessarily think, okay, how do I start my car, turn on the radio, check the mirror? Like, it's all one big blah. You kind of learn it that first time, then it's inside of you, and it gets so well integrated that it's even hard to break it down. Next is reflexive. So the reflexive memory is implicit because it just poof, something happens. It's a reflex. So for example, my stove is over there, If I touched it and it was hot and I moved my hand, that is a reflexive memory that is conditioned. That something is conditioned when you get some type of benefit from it. Like if I'm touching my stove, here, touch, 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 and then it's hot, I pull my hand away. The reward is that I'm not in pain anymore. That's a pretty good one. So conditioned. The other way is emotional. The emotional memory can be automatic. It can hit you at certain times and you don't even know it. And I wanted to talk about this one, and I'll return to talk about this because if you have had a difficult time in school or other kinds of difficult times, emotions can kind of sneak up on you and you don't even know that. And you don't know that they're coming, and they can really throw you off. So I wanted to mention that here. And with reflexive, it's sometimes difficult to know what is going to trigger certain emotions. And so it's important to take note of that when it happens, and to figure out why it happens, and then to figure out how to shield yourself in the future for that. And oftentimes it can be kind of hyping yourself up, like, if you, like my friend who lives next door to me, Heather, we watch films together in the backyard because it's a nice open space, but she doesn't like gruesome things. So I will tell her, these are the things that are going to happen. They look like this. The blood doesn't look real. It's totally fake. It's more, it's more as a joke. And so I warned her of those things, hoping that she'll get herself ready, or that she'll be able to excuse herself during that time and then come back if she doesn't want to see that part of a horror film or of a film that has violence. So thinking about those kinds of techniques of, especially in a classroom that is online, it's a different experience to experience something in isolation rather than with a class. And so we will think through that a little bit more. So all these different kinds of memory pathways. Explicit, boom, it's there. It's in the front of your head. Implicit is it's in the back of your head, and not literally. I mean, I know we talked about the brain, but it is what's in the forefront, what's in the background. And thinking about certain procedures where like certain nursing procedures, you want those to be so automatic that you don't even have to think about it, that they're just right there. And on the other hand, you're going to want explicit words to be there, explicit explicit information, so that you can pull that out and have that when you need that. And the more that you use these things, use these pathways, then the more natural that's going to come out. So we are going to talk about the information processing model of memory. And I really like this model because it breaks it down in so many ways, and it shows you how complicated memory is. And keep in mind, when we talk about information coming in, it can come in through the ears, it can come in through the eyes, it can come in through the hands. So there are these different ways, and each of those modes has a different way that it works. So, for example, I can hold a picture in my mind's eye better than I can hold what I hear. So if you draw a picture of 5 things that I need to buy at the store, I got that. You tell me 5 things, no, I'm not going to get that. And if you let me touch the milk carton that I need to buy, I'm sure that I'll get that. So thinking about how that information is then processed through what we are going to look at here, okay? So here we go. Information coming in. This is what happens to it. First it is perceived, okay? And that is the information coming in. You perceive it with your eyes, with your ears, with your hands. Then it goes into working memory. Working memory is the information in short term. So short term, working memory are oftentimes used interchangeably, although there are some little tweaks between those. But it is the information that comes in, and if you're focused on it, you can do something with that information. But a lot of times we are not focused on it, and and then it decays, or there's interference, okay? But the way that we remember it is through maintenance rehearsal. So back in the day, before you could call, get a phone number off the web, I would have to call information where I'd say, okay, I need the phone number for Los Medanos College. And then the operator would say, okay, hold on a minute. And then they would put me on a recording, and then they would say, the number is 925473, and so forth. So in my head, actually, let's change the number on that. Let's say 8675309. Okay, so that is the number I got. So I repeat it again and again. 8675309. 8675309. And I rehearse it again and again and again. And if I do that enough, it will stay longer in my working memory. But if there's interference, that is going to mess you up. So if I'm doing 8675309, 8675309, and somebody comes up and they interrupt me, especially if they interrupt me with a number, that is going to throw me off. That is interference, and that interference will either make me forget, or I would have to get back into the groove. If I got back, if I had a good groove, and if I had some memory techniques, then the interference isn't going to hurt as much. But in this case, we can assume that it will interfere, and I would have to go back and call that phone number again. Also, if the information is not used, you lose it, okay? So if it's not used and it's just in there and you forget it, it decays and it's gone. Poof. But we don't want these things to happen to you while you're in college. So we have to do something. We need to get it from working memory into long-term memory. And long-term memory, you do that by exercising that information, by elaborating on it, by connecting it to information that you already know. So elaborative rehearsal is building on what you're trying to learn. So for example, I know the number 8675309 because that actually comes from a song from the 1980s where it goes 8675309. So for that, I encoded that information well. I don't know anyone else's phone number, but I know Jenny's from that song because they coded that information as a song. So I know it. And that is elaborative rehearsal where you get it into your brain so good that it stays in your long term. Now, it may stay in your long term for a long time or for a short time, but believe me, in 20 years, you will be like, oh yeah, I took that philosophy class at LMC and that person talked about this thing. It's like, oh, that long-term memory is still there. It may be kind of dormant or kind of like shoved down because you haven't used it a lot, but if you can really get that information in there, it's gonna stick. Also, another way of getting it into long-term memory is knowledge from what you already know, okay? Knowledge from what you already know. So connecting something in your long-term with the information in the working memory that you're trying to put into long-term. So what would that be? That would be if you are in a psychology class and you are learning about classical conditioning, thinking about an example from your own life, and then that example connects it to the short term. So it links it, because if you can have more of those links, then that is going to help you to keep that information. So what I imagine is like, it's a little embarrassing, but this is my workspace. Let's see. Okay. No, this is my microwave, but this is my workspace. I have this is a photo album that I use as a camera stand, and then my phone, and then my calendar, a bunch of books. Oh, look, there's some marshmallows that I just happen to have here, my iPad, my squishy balls, and then over there I have a hat and a sequence tablecloth and a few other things. But this is my workspace. This is similar to working memory. Now, there may be certain things on this table that I don't need, like I don't need the marshmallows anymore. Those, I'm done with that. I'm going to take that away and put it somewhere else. It does not have to stay here and take up space, because we don't want working memory to have a lot of stuff going on. We want, because the more things that there are, like this is not a great looking workspace because there's a lot of things that can interfere here. Like having a phone here, oh no, you don't want that because it distracts you. That is the interference. You don't want, like sometimes I'll leave something somewhere and then it's like it gets roots, and then it just kind of stays there and it grows there, and I forget that it's there. So it loses all of its purpose, and that can happen in working memory too, where it just becomes camouflaged. So this is my workbench, though. I want to do something with the information on this workbench. But this is all temporary. I eventually need to do something with this stuff or throw it out. Basically, use it or throw it out. And that's where thinking about long-term. Long-term is like the bookshelf behind you. I don't have one, but that's okay. But let's pretend this is a tool room or a library, okay? And I have all of these tools in my tool room, and I have my workbench here. If I want this thing that I'm working on here to go into my shelf here, I need to figure out how I will do that. I would do that by elaborative rehearsal and knowledge from the long term. And so taking something from here and then putting it here, and then taking this whole thing and putting it back here, this helps so that I can take this book when I need it, use it, and then put it back. And maybe this book, this I think is a good example. Maybe I wrote on it early on, but the more that I add to it, the more that I will be able to store that, and there's information that is all connected in that. So I hope that that makes sense. Comment in the thread if it does not, because I really want you, especially on this slide, to look at how does your own working memory work. And for me, I'm better on pictures than I am on number or words. I'm way better on words than I am on pictures. If you give me 5 separate words and they don't have any common themes in them, I am not going to remember them. That's why I would need to think about tools to get me to link those words all together. And that may be in a visual way, or that may be in a language trick way. So, using information from the processing model, okay? One is to access previously learned information. This is why field trips are so good, because you go out and you experience things, and then you could always bring that back in to understanding new things that you learned. But even if you haven't traveled as broadly, then you can still watch TV and movies and YouTube and listen to music that you can take information from and build on that. So you already have a foundation in something else. If you can access that previously learned information, even if it's tangential, even if it's a little bit off, it's okay, because you will be able to connect with the material and remember it for a longer time. Next, connect new information to long-term. I basically already said that. I don't know why I had that twice, but oh well. Also, spiral curriculum and learning, where you do it again, you do it again, you do it again, and hopefully in each time it's in a different mode. Okay, so visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Okay, keep in mind that if you are using a substance, you will have to spiral more times. So instead of doing something 3 times, you may have to do it 6 times, because you used a substance that may interfere with your memory, which is why it's important to really look at the use of substances like alcohol and like marijuana, because when you study and you're on those, it can interfere with the learning process. Your head's foggy. It's not the best time to remember certain things. Next, help to visually organize information in diagrams. There is a website called inspiration.com, and they have some wonderful ways to create mind maps, but there's lots of other programs that can create mind maps too, including your basic PowerPoint. So thinking about that, or just drawing them. Like I saw a mind map when I was in here. I love mind maps. And actually, this mind map was on the class. This is a big old mess, but nonetheless, it helped me to organize myself. But this one is not great for me to remember, but this one is, because I encoded this mind map so that it's different aspects of a concept, but also it is represented in pictures. If I am trying to memorize something, this is how I do it. It has to be in pictures. And then when I'm trying to remember it on the test, I remember the pictures, then I put the words onto it. The words will come if I have the pictures, but the words will not come on their own with how my memory works, especially if I'm trying to put a lot of information on or into it. This does take a longer time. But remember, for every unit, you should be doing 3 hours of studying and reading and homework and doing your projects. This is where this comes in. You just can't look at some information and think that it's going to soak into your head. You really have to think about the ways that are going to get into your brain and stick there. You want them to stick. Another way to do this, which is more of a verbal way, is doing acronyms. So, for example, fanboys. And these include for, and, not, but, or, yet, so. So, comma, fanboy. Okay. So for me, this is how I learned how to use a comma. I had a difficult time otherwise because I would just put commas anywhere that I felt that I had to take a breath. And that is not how commas work. So if you do a fanboy, that helps. And I still think about this whenever I need to add a comma into something. And finally, I want you to write down 3 things that you learned or that you can apply from the video that you just watched. So 3 things you can learn, or that you learned, or that you will apply. I think I'm also going to ask you how you think your memory works best and what that means for you in school. So be sure to include that in the discussion and check out what other people say as well. Thanks for watching this video.